Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions and I do my best to provide a biblical answer. Well, today's question is one that I dare say that many of us have wrestled with or perhaps do wrestle with today. A very pastoral question. So here it is. I heard you speak on condemnation and wondered what advice you can give me as I'm in my late teens at uni and struggle with lust. I pray, but it doesn't work. You know, that's a question. I hear your anxiety. I hear your frustration, your pain in that. And can I just begin by saying a couple of things? One is I commend you for your honesty. You know, for being honest, not just with yourself, but with me as well. Asking the question is a step of honesty, saying, hey, I want to be accountable. I hear your pain in this, that your frustration, that sense of being overwhelmed. I pray and it's not working. Let me assure you that it may not be delivering the results that you're looking for right now, but prayer it tunes us to heaven. And the very fact that you're praying about this is actually, it's working more than you realize, because what it's doing is it's holding you. It's holding you to the point where you've asked this question. If prayer wasn't working, then you probably would have been driven to the point of despair where you could well have given up. The very fact that you've asked the question, you've been honest with yourself enough to say, hey, I can't deal with this, I need help, is an indication that the prayer is working. God is answering you. He's getting your attention. He's holding you and keeping you from yourself. So don't be discouraged. Don't give up. Okay, so let me see if I can offer some helpful advice. What advice can I give? Well, in these situations, I hear your desperation. I hear this is clearly something that you've struggled with. You don't want to indulge. You don't want to be riddled with this lust. You don't want to carry that sense of guilt that they carry. My advice is maybe you have to take some extreme actions. Maybe it's time to really do something quite radical. I think of what Mark said in relation to another context, another situation, but his advice applies in this context, I think, in Mark chapter 9. He's telling his disciples that, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. He said, if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Now, he's not talking about self-mutilation. He's using hyperbole to draw a picture for his disciples, which they got, that sometimes you just have to take extreme measures to avoid falling into temptation. Sometimes you've got to take extreme measures to avoid giving in to lust, giving in to sin that will keep you from the promises of God. Now, I want you to be clear on this. I'm not saying that lust is going to cause you to miss out on salvation, that because you struggle with lust, that therefore you have forfeited any the salvation that you've got or anything like that. I'm not saying that, and the Bible's very clear. It's not saying that either. But what it is saying is that these things can, at times, if we don't deal with them, lead us away from God rather than to God. And that's why I encourage you. The fact you're asking the question is an indication to me, at any rate, that you initially are seeking the will of God. You want to please God, and therefore the prayer that you're asking, even though you're not receiving the answer you want, as I say, it's holding you in that place so that God is able to speak into your life. So what advice would I give in that regard? Well, I think of what Paul wrote in Romans 13. Towards the end there, he's talking about not participating in sexual immorality, about being sexually promiscuous. He talks about avoiding quarreling and jealousy and all those things. And then he says in verse 14, let me bring it up because I think it's really important to look at. I think it could be helpful for you here. Here it is. So he said, instead of all of these things, I want to get this right. Instead, clothe yourself with the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ. And get this, don't let yourself think about ways to indulge your evil desires. See, that's what I mean by extreme action. Jesus says, deal with whatever's going to cause you to stumble before you do, while you have a chance. And here's Paul saying, don't let yourself even think about ways to indulge your evil desires. In other words, extreme action could be you're sitting at home, maybe by yourself, maybe with friends, you're watching something on YouTube, you're watching something, a movie, and there's a scene where somebody is scantily clad, or there's partial nudity or whatever, and you begin to feel those lustful desires rise up. Leave the room. Just walk away. If you're by yourself, turn it off. Switch the channel. Take extreme measures. Don't just think, oh, I can turn. Don't just turn away. Leave. He said, because what happens is if you don't, then you take action, then those thoughts are going to lead to indulging those evil desires. So before you even think about ways to indulge them, change the channel. Stop thinking about them. Think about something else. Make yourself accountable to people who can help you in this. I mean, it is a big deal. It's not particular just to you. This is something that many people struggle with, male and female. That's why Paul writes to the church. They struggled with these types of things back then. Don't let yourself think about ways of indulging evil desires, indulging lust. The moment you feel them rising up, deal with it. Walk away. Whatever it takes, take extreme measure. The moment, if you're walking down the street and you see somebody that sparks those lustful desires, turn away. Before you even, don't try and think, I can get this. I can overcome this. I've got this. Just walk away, turn the other way, whatever it takes. Begin to think about other things so that you don't feed that lust and begin to think of ways of indulging it. That's why Paul talks to young Timothy, pastor of a church, in 2 Timothy 2:22, all the twos. He says, run from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Run from anything. So if you're listening, if you're here to music, you're watching something on YouTube, you're watching a film, whatever, you're out walking in the summer, whatever, you see somebody that's attractive to you. Before these thoughts can even form in your mind, flee from them, run from them. Think about something else. This is why having an accountability person is so important. Not someone who's going to judge you, but someone who will help you. Because if you can begin to take these extreme steps and hold yourself accountable, you'll find yourself beginning to see people different. Because the lustful thoughts are not the other person's problem. It's your problem. How they dress is not the issue. What they look like is not the issue. It's your issue. How they behave is not their issue. It's your issue. You're choosing to let that spark these lustful thoughts in you, and you have to deal with them. And if you follow the advice of Paul, then before long you'll begin to see people different. You'll begin to think differently, and you'll find that your prayers have been answered, just not in the ways God hasn't taken the desires from you. You've learned to master them before they have mastered you. So that would be my advice to you. I hope it's helpful. And certainly it's not new. It's something that we've all struggled with. But I commend you for owning it and for wanting to take steps to deal with it. Well, that's it for this time around. You can always ask your questions on slido.com. Use the hashtag ALC22. But that's it for this time. Until next time, God bless.